Hi, everyone. This is Karen Hung. I'm the co-chair for the Membership Engagement Committee, and I want to welcome you to our 2021 CEO Roundtable. Today, we're so excited to feature Kevin Conroy, the CEO, Chairman, and President of Exact Sciences. Today, for our session, we're going to have three components of our time. The first one, we're going to spend really thinking about and listening to Kevin talk about Exact Sciences, market context, what are the trends he's looking into. Number two, the second section, we'll talk about leadership and women in boards, women in executive ranks, and what does that mean? And the third is some Q&A from our audience. Let me start by sharing some highlights from Kevin's bio, but then I also want to segue into other pieces outside of his bio that I researched and found. Kevin Conroy joined Exact Sciences in 2009. He is the CEO, chairman, and he has been part of a team that has transformed Exact Sciences into one of the world's premier cancer diagnostic company with more than 4,500 employees. They are global, and they are working on early detection and treatment guidance throughout the cancer continuum. Their biggest brands are Cologuard and Oncotype DX. Now, before Exact Sciences, Kevin was the CEO and president of Third Wave Technologies, which had a very successful exit in being sold to Hologic out of Boston. He also had leadership positions at GE Healthcare and started his career as an intellectual property law attorney. So he moved from being an attorney into business and a serial entrepreneur. As far as boards, Kevin currently serves as the director at Epitozyme Inc. and Adaptive Biotech Corporation. He's also on the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce and on the University of Wisconsin-Madison Chancellor's Advisory Council. He has a bachelor's in electrical engineering from Michigan State and a Juris Doctorate from the University of Michigan Law School. So two very big rivals there in his portfolio of education. Now, outside of the bio, here's some things that I heard that was very interesting in my research and preparation, that when Kevin joined Exact Sciences in 2009, the share price was about $1 share price. I think they were at the risk of being defunded at that time. In 2016, Exact Sciences stock price was around $6 a share, and today is $130 to $140 a share. So certainly a good investment. In the 2016 to 2020 timeframe, according to Deloitte, Exact Sciences grew at 782%. Wow, 782%. Who does that, right? And then also, Exact Sciences has very big, audacious goals to be the early cancer detection company. One piece that I thought was very powerful is the disruption around how to think about cancer detection that Kevin and Exact Sciences is changing. So they're changing from screening an organ to screening a person. Really different, really different. The breakthrough also has been from highly clinical scenarios to being able to access these tests in non-invasive ways and also in the privacy of your home. Please join me in welcoming Kevin Conroy to our CEO Roundtable.
And the data were so powerful that it convinced me to join the company. And that was the first part of the meeting. The second part of the meeting was, that's colon cancer. Ultimately, you want to apply these same technologies to detecting all cancers so that instead of screening an individual organ, you are screening a whole person. And he made the case in that, I think the meeting was in February of 2009. He made the case that that would be the most powerful and dramatically impactful diagnostic test ever developed if you could make that happen. So we together partnered with Mayo Clinic to develop Cologuard. It took us 5 years. In August 2014, it was approved by the FDA. It was the first test or medical device that was both approved by FDA and covered by Medicare on the same day. So they kind of invented within the government an innovative new program, and Cologuard was the first test through that program. And then we were able to launch Cologuard, and from that first year where we screened about 4,000 people, last year it was closer to 1.7 million people, a little more than 1.7 million people. And to date, we've screened over 5 million. So from 2017, we generated 99 million in revenue. Last year, we generated 1.5 billion. The company has grown from 3 people to now 5,500, and we've all had to grow along with it. This is really just the start, because cancer diagnostics is it's entered its golden era. And we're in the first couple of innings of that golden era, as the power of science is allowing us to peer inside cancer cells and change treatment on a unique basis based on what's going on in that patient. And also, and we can talk about this, but to detect after treatment whether surgery or chemotherapy got all of the cancer, or to, with a simple blood draw, detect whether cancer is recurring well before you could see it on a PET scan, which is the most sensitive, most accurate way to detect cancer today. So as a company, we have this, the goal of eradicating cancer through early detection. Instead of having it be something that is spread throughout your body, detect it when it is small and addressable, treatable. And then also for the people who do have later stage cancer, to help make sure that you get the right therapy for that particular type of cancer. And the world is changing drastically, and the team at Exact is leading the way with that change.
Kevin, you said a lot of things. I want to just unpack a few things here. When you talk about the golden era of cancer, say more about that.
If with cancer diagnostics, historically, there really weren't that many accurate tests that had been developed to, for example, detect cancer early in a non-invasive manner. Cologuard, the test that we developed with the Mayo Clinic, detects 92% of cancers, 94% of early stage cancers from a stool sample. To put that in perspective, the best estimate of how accurate colonoscopy is that it detects 95% of cancers. So you can't really compare those two head to head, because it hasn't been compared in a study head to head. Ballpark, Cologuard is awfully accurate, because what you're looking for are slight changes in DNA in cancer cells that are being sloughed off at a high rate into the colon. And then the science behind this golden era of diagnostics is the ability to what is called sequence DNA. We all have about 3 billion base pairs in our chromosomes. We have 3 billion different letters. Each letter is either a C, A, T, or G, and there are 3 billion of those. It's a huge amount of data to analyze, and chemically, you can today analyze a whole human genome for about $600. If you go back 15 years ago, when I first got into this space, the human genome had just been fully decoded, and it cost $6 billion to do the first persons. So the cost of analysis of what's going on in somebody's what's called a genome, or the sequence of all of those letters, has plummeted. It's beat Moore's law for computing power. And so those costs have just come down, and that unlocks the ability to do a whole bunch of different really cool things when it comes to diagnosing, helping to guide treatment of cancer.
Kevin, you've talked about eradicating cancer through early detection, but I would say you've also democratized access to cancer detection. I mean, in terms of like price and even some of the way your treatments happen, they can be done in the privacy of your own home, right? So remarkable.
Going back to 2009, sitting in Dave's office, it was really incredible, because he said, look, he's a gastroenterologist. He was very passionate about making sure that all of the barriers to screening got removed. So he very passionately articulated that 40% of Americans can't just take off a day or two of work to go get a colonoscopy. It's not possible because they lose a day or two of salary, and it's not practical for them to do that. So the goal there, and that's just one example of a barrier, is to develop a test that you can do in the privacy of your own home. The other thing was, not everybody wants to do a prep before they get screened. And Cologuard is a test that you can have a normal meal the night before, you can eat the day of, it doesn't matter. There is no prep or dietary changes associated with the Cologuard test. And
yes, we all know that the prep for colonoscopies are a lot of fun.
Yeah. So only about half of people in the US, there are 100 million Americans in the screening age, a little more than that, 45 or older. By the way, the screening age is now 45, not 50. And only about half of people will get a colonoscopy. So we developed Cologuard intentionally to address these barriers, cost being one of them. So colonoscopy, if you're insured through United, it's typically going to cost, or a commercial insurer, to not be specific about an insurer, is between $1,500 and $2,500. Cologuard for insurance companies is $509.
Oh, that's great. Well, Kevin, I want to ask you about what do you think has made Exact Sciences so successful? I mean, we talked about the sea change you all have created and caused in the market. You've mentioned a number of them, right? Creating access, lowering barriers, creating non-invasive access, non-invasive procedures and things like that. But what has made Exact Sciences successful, both short-term and long-term?
I think in long-term, and I've been with Exact now 12 years, it has been setting big, audacious goals and then systematically creating priorities every year. So we always start with 3 priorities and getting everybody to row the boat together through those 3 priorities. So that you take a big, hairy, complex challenge and break it down into bite-sized challenges that are a year long, and go and achieve those goals. And so what we do is to tie everybody in the company, every hourly employee, every salary employee is on a bonus plan. And those bonuses are not individually based. They are team based, and the team measurements for me is the same as the person working in our warehouse. It is, are we achieving those 3 goals?
Oh, that's great. I remember in one of the pieces that I read about you and your history, that I think it was at Exact Sciences, but it may have been through at the Third Wave, but that when you got there were like 52 goals, and there was like nothing tangible, no tangible product offering, and no business discipline. How did you kind of get an organization to move from that to very focused, very disciplined?
When I became CEO of Third Wave, previously I'd been a lawyer, and the most that I ever had reporting to me was 1 person, a paralegal once. So I had to make it simple, because I thought that great business leaders were just incredibly magical people who could do a million different things at once. And what I realized is that business people and scientists are just like everybody. They want to be able to focus on a limited number of things to be successful. And I had an incredible board of directors, and each board member gave me a slightly different kind of way to think about being a good leader. And one of them, Jim Connolly, said, look, there's a rule of 3. If you have more than 3 priorities, you really have none. Your job is to simplify. And then another said, hey, Kevin, I find that it's really impactful to report out weekly. So every week I would write an email. Here's how we're progressing on the 3 priorities. So everybody in the company would know, and then we'd have all employee meetings every 3 months in person. And we've kept that going now at Exact Sciences. Every 3 months, we have an all-employee meeting. Now it's on Zoom, but in our last Zoom meeting, we had 3,500 people join, and then we're able to watch. So it keeps people, you're kind of holding each other accountable, and the priorities are put up on the wall. And it gives you the ability, in my mind, to say, raise your hand if you're not working on one of those 3 things.
That's great.
So when people feel kind of lost, like, am I having an impact? They can say to their manager, I'm not working on anything related to those 3 priorities. And it helps keep people moving everything forward.
That's great. Thanks, Kevin. These are great practical tips. I know our audience is comprised of a number of women executives in business and or civic leaders in organizations. So those are some great things we can apply across the board.
Karen, one thing I have found during the pandemic is doing a weekly video update that ties to those 3 priorities. First of all, I was a little uncomfortable doing it. And as much as you do public speaking, I don't think anybody loves to do public speaking, or maybe I'm not extroverted enough. But what I found is that by doing a video from 2 to 4 minutes was way more impactful than an email update. Yeah. And it was a heck of a lot less time consuming, because I have to look and say, okay, here's how we're progressing. And I typically try to focus on one topic. And I've had more positive feedback from those videos than anything else that we've done. And we have seen employee engagement scores go straight up over the period of the pandemic, even though people are working in crazy, difficult circumstances.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love the focus and the fact that it's bite-sized and memorable, right? They can remember what you said. That's great. Actually, since we're talking about the pandemic, let's talk a little bit about some of the things you learned, some of the things you changed during that time. We hear you about the communication, but what else? How else did you all create some wins during a really rough time for the rest of the world?
Well, when the pandemic first hit, we probably had 3 weeks ahead of most realized that it was going to be an issue. And a team decided to look at developing a test, because we were really fearful our labs were going to shut down together and the whole company would shut down. And we knew we needed a way to bring up a test so that we could take care of our own people. And we threw out the 3 priorities, and we said our new 3 priorities are take care of each other, take care of our customers, and save money, because our Cologuard testing went down 90% basically overnight.
Wow.
Now that rapidly came back, but the team brought up a test for us. We reached out to the state of Wisconsin and said, can we help you bring up a test? They said, why don't you bring up a test for the state? And within a few months, we had emergency FDA approval, and we were doing about 100,000 COVID tests a week, 80 or 90% of them in the state of Wisconsin. So that was a Herculean task to convert the whole plant and to get FDA approval and to change the IT infrastructure. We probably had 1,000 or 1,500 people who worked on that in some way, shape, or form.
Wow. Probably around the clock too, right?
It really was around the clock. And as I said, not a single PowerPoint presentation. We got FDA approval without a PowerPoint presentation. It was awesome.
Yeah, how much energy goes into PowerPoints, right? Actually, Kevin, I just recently I got COVID tested, and I got an Exact Sciences communication and app. So it must have been through your labs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Wow. Well, it's amazing because, a lot of companies had to really pivot, and you guys pivoted really hard to really drive that. But, your biggest thing, I think, and what I've seen and read about you is staying mission focused, about saving and impacting lives. Can you talk more about that, staying mission focused throughout this course of time?
If for us, it's the mission from the start has been to get everybody screened for colon cancer. We know that if you really want to beat this disease, you detect cancer early, or you actually detect a precancerous polyp and remove it and prevent cancer in the first place. And so most people here, I'm sure, have a story about a friend or a family member that has been touched by colon cancer. And that's certainly true at Exact Sciences. So that is our mission. Now the mission has expanded with other areas that we're going into, is to eradicate cancer and to lessen the suffering that it causes. And so that's something that everybody can stay awfully focused on, because the tests that we develop will be used by friends and family and people in our community and people not only throughout the country, but all around the world.
That's great. Definitely a noble and audacious goal for sure, Kevin. Kevin, I want to switch gears a tiny bit and just ask you, what are some of the market trends that you're watching?
Well, we spend a lot of time watching right now what's happening with COVID, like all of you do too, because it significantly affects how many people are being screened. And what we're seeing today is about a 25% decrease in mammographies, which impacts our breast cancer testing, which I'll talk about in a minute, and also about a 25% decrease in colon cancer screenings. So our sales force, by and large, is not able to be in the primary care or oncology or urology offices, the places that we are active. And we hope that as the pandemic lessens, we're able to get back into those offices so that we can educate healthcare providers and get more people tested. That's a big trend. The other trend is certainly the cost of capital. As a publicly traded company, financing these big R&D programs is something that we have been able to raise capital. We've been able to do some acquisitions, and investors really support that. It is an era of growth, and growth is being rewarded.
Kevin, talk about some of your acquisitions, because some of your acquisitions you've moved very quickly with. What's your strategy and some of your tactics around acquisitions?
The first big acquisition that we did was of an incredible company called Genomic Health. And Genomic Health was run by Kim Popovits, who is like a legend in the field of cancer diagnostics. She had worked at Genentech. Actually, we grew up about 6 miles from each other in Flint, Michigan. We didn't know each other. She went to Michigan State. I went to Michigan State. I knew her for about 10 years, and it was only about 5 years into knowing her that I found out that we had grown up basically in next door neighborhoods. And but Kim had built a company focused on helping to answer a really important question that women with early stage breast cancer have, which is, will they benefit from chemotherapy? 80% of patients with certain types of early stage breast cancer don't benefit. The question is, which ones do and which ones don't? You didn't fully know until the Oncotype DX test definitively answered that question. And it also answers the question of what's your likelihood of breast cancer recurrence. Today, 70% of all early stage breast cancer patients in the US get the Oncotype DX breast recurrence score test. And it's amazing because most of the time it tells somebody you are highly unlikely to benefit from chemotherapy.
Wow.
And so that was our first acquisition. And Genomic Health had about 1,500 people, and it had approaching 500 million in revenue and great margins, and was profitable. And it was international with a good piece of that revenue outside of the US and a 100-person team outside of the US. Nobody in our space has successfully exported one of these really advanced cancer tests outside of the US, and Genomic Health figured out how to do that. So that was the starting point, and that took us from the primary care setting where screening occurs to the oncology or cancer treatment physician, where a lot of future advanced tests will be. Then we acquired Thrive, which is a company that has developed an amazing test, a simple blood draw that detects many, if not potentially most cancers from a blood draw. Now, it misses a fair number of cancers, so it's not perfect. The idea, though, is that you would get this test every 2 or 3 years over a course of time. And even if it detects half of cancers in a population, those are going to be earlier and treatable. In their big longitudinal study that they ran, and a good example is they found a woman with stage 1 ovarian cancer. Now, hardly anybody is diagnosed with stage 1 ovarian cancer because it's totally contained within the ovaries, and it's asymptomatic until it has started to spread and actually attach to different parts of the abdomen. Do you notice, or you get an ultrasound where it's large enough to see? So the woman in the study had surgery, no chemotherapy, and is cancer-free and will likely remain cancer-free because it just hasn't spread. And that's the power of a non-invasive blood-based multi-cancer screening test. And it's going to take a number of years to bring that all the way through the FDA process and the Medicare process, and to launch it into general use in the public. When this is made available, it will change cancer forever.
Wow, definitely life-changing in so many ways. Wow, that's all I can say. Why don't we shift into our second segment to talk about leadership, women on boards, women in executive ranks. And to start us off, I just want to kind of quote you a little bit and just remind all of our listeners that in 2019, Kevin and Exact Sciences was featured in MWI's Power of Three. And Exact Sciences actually had the #1 spot in Wisconsin of publicly traded companies for women in leadership. So the statistics back then were 7 out of 25 or 28% women in your executive ranks. Now today, according to your website, you have 5 out of 15 or 30% of women. I think these are the women in your most senior ranks, Kevin. And then you also have 4 very notable women on your board out of 10. And so I just think that's tremendous. But here's the question around that is, how are these numbers reflective of your strategic direction and intentionality? Because I'm sure you did not get there by accident.
Well, I'll never forget the day that I got your report. And I looked at, and by the way, it's just incredible work that you're doing to just have the idea to do something like you have done, to analyze all the companies in the state and to provide that feedback. I got that report, I read it, and I thought, isn't this amazing? And we had 1 female board member at the time. And I just thought this is a great thing to track. And when we look at the patients that we serve, the physicians that we work with, we know that we are serving a very diverse population in the US and globally. And that how in the world can we be successful at what we do if everything that we develop is through the lens of white males? It's not possible, actually. And so we've really tried to be intentional about when we recruit people, we measure ourselves, and we're actually part of the senior management team's bonus at the end of the year. There's a plus or minus on whatever the company achieves, and that plus or minus is based upon do we have a diverse slate of candidates for all of our director level and above. And this was I asked a good friend who is African American's CEO of a healthcare company, Tony, hey, can you help me think through how I can change our company? And he said, Kevin, just start with a diverse slate. Go do that, hold everybody accountable to that, and watch what happens. And as we have done that, it's amazing the talent that we have found from all over the country. And so we've kept doing that. That was about 4 years ago. and our board has changed, and I think our company will continue to become more diverse. And I would say to a person on the management team that there is 100% buy-in that this is the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do from a societal standpoint. It's also the right thing to do in terms of serving the people that we serve.
That's great. Kevin, one of the things that I know this audience is very interested in is in terms of women on boards. Why does that matter? And why does it matter in terms of just plain good business sense? Now, you've talked about representing the market, right? The diversity of the market. But really, at the end of the day, why does it matter? Why does it matter to you?
Well, let me start. Why does it matter to me? My mother, who's 86 and healthy, and was a nurse, and then a head of nursing, and she helped raise, I don't know if helped, she raised 5 kids. And I have 3 sisters, and they're all in 2 of the 3 of them now are in a professional environment, and a third was. And I have 3 daughters, and I have a wife who's a lawyer. And it's important to me personally because it's just the way I grew up. And I have grown up knowing the impact of strong, educated, confident women and the power that they bring to helping get things done, achieve goals, lead, transform, all of that. I think it's also important if we're serving patients with breast cancer. 98% of people with breast cancer are women. All in the world, can we be the leading breast cancer company in the world, which is a diagnostic company in the world, if we don't have a broad leadership that includes women?
Yeah.
When we're marketing to consumers, which we spend about $80 million a year marketing to consumers, how do we do that effectively if we're not diverse? We're running a television commercial right now with white people putting sunscreen lotion on at the beach. And one of our Black leaders came and said, "What in the world are you doing? Do you realize you're just really, we're pigeoning ourselves in kind of in a position as being, that's what white people do, Kevin. That's not," and it was interesting because, you know, that tells us that we have a gap in terms of our advertising and how we're looking at that and how we're making it. That follows an ad that we had a Black male walking up a set of stairs talking about the importance of being screened. So you can't think, well, just because we had one commercial with a Black actor, that the next commercial with white people putting sunscreen on. You've got to really be thoughtful. And how are you thoughtful if you don't have that perspective?
Yeah.
So I'm just, you know, pointing out a couple of different things, but it's critically important. It's also important for another reason, and we just launched a pretty ambitious diversity, equity, and inclusion program. And we started with, why do we want to do this? And everybody has their own story about why it's important, but that's what we started with, was why is this personally important to us? And growing up in Flint, Michigan, it's pretty important because you could see, I went to Black elementary schools and a Black junior high school, predominantly Black. And so my friends and my experience that I saw, I could see a difference in the way people were treated. I could also see the difference, you know, in the way that people thought about their future and the dreams they had. And then when you look at what happened, 80,000 out of 80,000 jobs, 75,000 went away. Who did that impact the most? So when we think about the community impact that a company can have, we gave $1 million to United Way last year, and that's been a core part of who we are.
Mm.
It's really important to impact people outside of just your customer base, your employees.
Yeah.
And that's why now our employees have given everything they can give during the pandemic, because I think they see and feel that connection to the lives that you can change within a company.
Yeah. Wow. Lots of heart there, Kevin. Lots of heart. Hard to segue from that moment. Let me ask you this on a different point, which is, if you talk to any of your peer group CEOs at a macro level, how do you talk to them about moving the gender and diversity, equity, parity needle so that commerce can influence culture for good?
Yeah. What I see in science is you have today more than 50% of young people who are graduating from school in science programs are women. And I just pulled the statistics as of the last quarter. Our overall gender diversity is 55% female and 28% ethnic diversity. And in Madison, Wisconsin, that's probably not the easiest thing on the ethnic side to achieve. On the gender side, what you're seeing is that women are coming in as scientists, they're advancing, they are becoming CEOs in our space. I mentioned Kim Popovits, Bonnie Anderson, Tina Nova, the list just goes on and on and on. Many of the movers and shakers in life sciences and cancer diagnostics are women. And so they're influencing the space. I don't hear, it's not an old boys club at all. It is, you better have an open mind if you are going to come to the biotech meeting that is in Southern California every year, because you're going to have diverse panels. And by the way, the regulators, if you go to the FDA, I would say 3 out of 4 of the reviewers are female. If you come in mansplaining, as my kids have taught me, you are going to run into a brick wall.
Yeah, that's great. You're reminding me, Kevin, back in high school, we did a career day, and you're an engineer, or you started as an electrical engineer. I went into an engineering classroom to understand what it was. I was the only woman, and I was the only person of color in that room, and it felt really uncomfortable. And at that moment, I decided, well, I'm not going to do engineering. I'll do something else. So it's great to hear progress.
Come hang out with us. You won't. That won't be the case.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear about the progress. Let's talk about advice for the audience. There's a lot of women who are currently on boards in this audience, as well as women who are aspiring to be on boards, and women who are just wanting to advocate for women on boards. What advice do you have for these 3 segments of the audience who are listening today?
I think that the key thing is to do the kind of things that you're doing right now. By every state should have a group that is doing what you're doing. It's basically holding companies accountable. You're getting information out, and you kind of get what you measure, and you're providing the yardstick. And so that's going to create opportunities. I think now is a time that the world is changing pretty rapidly. So there are going to be a lot of open board seats that are filled with women. So talk to the recruiters there are a limited number of recruiters in any state or nationally that really focus on board work. So, get your name out there. It takes time. Frequently boards are, I would say roles are filled in one of 2 ways. probably more than half the time it occurs with somebody on the board who knows somebody who's the right fit, right industry fit, et cetera. And less than half the time, but a good percentage of the time, it's through a recruiter. So the board decides to hire a recruiting firm to go out there and find somebody. So I think it's both being in the right network and being known to the recruiters that do these searches.
That's great. Kevin, as a CEO, what are your expectations of your board members? And do they differ with women board members?
No, no, it doesn't differ at all. But the expectation is, of course, to read all the materials, which it can be a lot. Attend the board meetings, be really active in the board meetings. Try to understand the industry and the space. So dig in, go and visit customers if you'd be willing to. That really sets board members apart. I've only had two board members that I can recall that have ever said, I want to go out into the field with the salespeople and understand what's going on. And one board member, he was an awesome board member, he did that for 4 consecutive days. Also get to know the management team, because I find that my board is so effective at communicating to the broader Exact Sciences leadership team. And I know that male and female executives get a lot out of engaging with the board of directors. So get to know the management team and provide support.
Wow, great advice, tangible takeaways that we can all have. I'm just going to recap our portion, and I'd invite all our listeners to camera on if you want, and we'll move into Q&A. But big takeaways for today, and this doesn't encompass everything, is you can have big audacious goals, just stay focused on them. You can eradicate cancer and think about how to impact the world through very tangible ways. That's number one. Number two, leadership and your personal history really do play into how you can see the world and how you can think through it. Kevin's experience back in Flint, we saw the big heart come out. We know, I read some stories, your personal stories with your dad. And we did also learn about your daughters as well. So bring your whole self, I would say, is another big piece of what you're bringing. And then in terms of specific advice for us in expectations, is that women and men play equally on a board. And tangible advice, talk to recruiters. And then for effectiveness as a board member, learn the sector, be out in the field, touch a customer, and get to know the management team. So thank you so much, Kevin. Amazing stuff you're doing. And we want to thank you for not only being here today, but also all that you're doing in the world to make it a better place. With that, I'm going to ask my colleague, Kristen, to help us with some Q&A. So Kristen, I know you've been monitoring.
Yep, thanks, Karen. And thank you, Kevin. There's a lot of great feedback already on just in your transparency and telling your story, your journey. So we thank you for being so candid with us today. A few questions came in, and so I'm just going to start. And if others want to chime in with other questions, we'll go until 5, and then we'll end the Q&A at 5 and let Kevin continue on. So the first one is, you told the story of what kind of the catalyst for moving the needle within your own organization with diversity. And one of those items was receiving our research information, and that kind of got you moving. What recommendations would you have for us to try to reach more CEOs in the way we reached you with that? Are there other specific things or other ways we could be effective in sharing our mission?
I think that getting that same material, not only to CEOs, a lot of CEOs may grab that and toss it, is get it to other board members. Because frequently usually it's not the CEO picking the new board members. Usually it's the board members picking the new board members. Definitely get that information to the chair of every nominating and governing committee of every publicly traded company and the big private companies in the state as well. Because the world is changing, and I think that people are more open to changing with the world now than ever. So get it to the boards, and get it also to leadership teams beyond just the CEO, because this is information that people should have access to. And for me, I hardly get anything in the mail anymore. It really stood out because I got a paper copy of it and it wasn't just an email.
Great advice. Thank you. So we'll keep it a little old school just to
Yeah.
stand out from everyone else.
High
Great.
touch, high touch.
Yeah. Two questions kind of on the flip side of the coin of both related to your business and yourself personally. What do you see as the biggest threat to your business was one question. And then another one was, what lesson do you think you learned the hard way in your own personal leadership journey? So you can take either or neither or.
Yeah. What's the biggest threat is probably complacency. It's a fast moving scientific world. And if we don't commit to being the very, very best, having the best technology, the best products, we'll lose. This summer, I spent some time with John Burke, the CEO of Trek Bicycles. And what an incredible, he's been CEO for 20 some years, and he really thinks deeply about management and strategy. And when he laid out the company mission, it was, we build bikes we love. And then it went on. I don't remember the rest, but I said, what do you mean you build bikes we love? And he said, well, we are bike people. Our standards are a lot higher than our customers. And I left that saying, okay, now every time somebody comes to me and says, we want to build this test for cancer, but it's not really great, I say, do we love that test? No. So that's what I mean by complacency. Like John Burke is grown the biggest, most incredible, high quality bike company in the world here in Wisconsin. And he's done it with that in mind. Build great stuff, not good stuff, build stuff that they love. Probably for me, the biggest personal challenge in business has been both at Third Wave and Exact Sciences. At Third Wave, we developed a cervical cancer screening test based on the HPV virus. And we were a tiny little company, and we were up against really big competitors, and everybody said we couldn't do it, and we didn't have enough money, and we didn't have the scientific team. Now, the cool thing is the scientific team that developed that test was called Cervista. 7 women scientists. It wasn't intentional, it just happened to be 7 great scientists developed that test. Marilyn Olson was the head scientist. She now works at Exact Sciences. Everybody said we couldn't beat Roche and Genpro, and we did with a very small team with crystal clear priorities, but it was hard. When I say hard, we didn't have enough money, we didn't have the resources, we were up against we didn't know what we were doing really. So it was night and day and traveling and trying to figure out how we were going to finance the company. And everybody pulled together and got it done. That was the biggest challenge. The next biggest challenge was developing Cologuard when it was the same story. We were trying to raise money in 2009, which was really, really hard. By the way, Baird in Milwaukee, that team was awesome. Committed from the start to helping us get access to the capital that we needed to fund the R&D program. But nobody had ever tried to do a non-invasive test. The regulatory path wasn't clear. Insurance companies weren't like wildly in favor of this. We had to run a 10,000 patient clinical trial. Everything was super hard. And if we failed on any one of them, there was no company here. And so that was like 5 years of planes, trains, automobiles, nights, weekends, and everybody kind of threw themselves into it. So it was a challenge that we all went through. Those 2 experiences were pivotal.
Kristen, I'm going to jump in with a question before I say goodbye, because I'm also very curious about this. This is from Linda Gordons-Levy. She said, given your father, Senator Joe Conroy's service of 22 years in the Michigan State Legislature, is there any validation to the rumors of any potential politics in your future? And I did read about quite a few folks trying to urge you on, including former Governor Doyle. And Linda continues here. So that was Karen's comment. Linda continues, by the way, my husband is from Flint. My father-in-law knew your dad. So a little personal connection there.
Oh, really?
Yes. So Linda, raise your hand. Raise your hand. She's the one with the background.
And your last name is, I need to put my
Linda,
reading glasses-
Linda Gordon's Levy.
Huh. And my dad knew your dad or your
No, my
husband?
husband's from Flint, Mike Levy, and Marvin, who passed away, knew your dad. He was from lifelong Flint resident.
I couldn't go out shopping to a mall with my dad because he would
Right.
just start walking around talking to people.
Yep.
It was
He was famous.
he's 86 and still doing well and playing tennis in Flint on these dirt tennis courts. That is really a neat place to go. You know, I have thought about politics. Right now, you look at just how horrible politics can be, and it doesn't make you, it's like jumping into a vat of boiling oil. So every time I ask my father for advice, he says, Kevin, keep doing what you're doing. But I'll tell you just a quick story. When he was in Michigan State Senate, he was a rookie, but he wanted to be on the finance committee, and it was a majority Republican. He was a Democrat. And so he went to the conservative head of the finance committee and said, hey, Vern, I'd like to be on the finance committee. And he said, Joe, look, we have 7 seats and you have 6 seats and you don't get one of them. He said, Vern, I will never vote against you. I just want to be in the room. And Vern Ehlers put him on the committee. And for years and years and years, they worked together. And when Michigan went through this massive financial crunch, they worked together to help balance the budget. And so I don't know if politics are remotely like they were at one time, where you could actually just go and solve problems that affected a state. Probably at times I think, yeah, you probably could, but you'd have to sit down and talk to people and actually have honest conversations and compromise and work together. But the truth is, I am awfully happy doing what I'm doing.
All right,
you
thank
do
you.
well.
Thanks so much. I know Kristen will close us out.
Sure. And I just have, this is kind of coming full circle because one of our esteemed founders of Milwaukee Women Inc. is Mary Ellen Stanek, who's managing director with Baird. And I know I think we have Emily Phillips on, who's with Baird and works alongside Mary Ellen, I believe. So anyway, it's just kind of, we're a very small family here, right, in this world. So thanks for being a part of it. That's kind of the questions that I saw coming through. Let's see, noted. Yeah, I guess just kind of any other recommendations you have for us.
I guess I would just ask you, what recommendations do you have for me in terms of recruiting, attracting, retaining talented women, whether it's senior executives, whether it's frontline employees or board members?
Yeah, I mean, I can chime in, but I welcome anybody else from our group too that's on the call. I'll start by saying sometimes look in some unexpected places. There's great leadership that doesn't always know how to be seen. And we've learned from recruiters that, sometimes getting a board seat is almost just, you have to be friends with someone else on the board or someone in a placement of the board. So finding, making sure that those rocks are really getting uncovered and understood in the least expected places. I don't know if anybody else on wants to help answer Kevin's question. No, nobody does. All right, it's a quiet group tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks so much, Kevin, for being a part of us tonight. And if we can ever help you, feel free to reach out to us too.
Well, you already have, and I just, what you're doing in terms of analyzing and reporting what's going on in boards around the state is really important. It's impactful. And I really appreciate it. I have a daughter that's at the Medical College of Wisconsin, so I plan to get in and visit, and hopefully I can meet some of you in person. It's great what you're doing, and thanks so much for inviting me to chat.